Now, as we've been reporting this morning, state and territory leaders will meet in Melbourne today to discuss renewable energy and the national power market. It comes, of course, in the wake of last week's power blackout in South Australia. Chairing the meeting is the Federal Energy Minister, Josh Frydenberg, who joins us now. Mr Frydenberg, good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Nice to be with you, Michael.
What do you hope to get out of this meeting?
Well, first and foremost, we are going to get a briefing from the Australian Energy Market Operator as to what happened in South Australia and the implications of it, because it was a real wake-up call. And we need to recognise the importance, the paramount of energy security to the country, because what happened with 1.7 million people losing their power, the dramatic consequences it has had for investment and for business in South Australia is simply not good enough going forward. So we'll be talking about battery storage, we'll be talking about interconnectors, we'll be talking about hardening the infrastructure to withstand specific weather events, and of course we'll be talking about the state-based renewable targets.
Well, you know it happened already, Kerry. A report from that peak body during the week that the primary cause of the blackout was that huge storm.
Well, I've always said that that 1 in 50-year weather event in South Australia that led to 80,000 lightning bolts, led to the grid going down and the interconnectors having an electricity surge through them, Michael. So we will get further information. The preliminary report is in. There's still questions that AEMO have said they need answers to. That will come over time, but this will be an important opportunity for ministers to get a first-hand briefing.
OK, now you are calling for a national approach to setting renewable energy targets. As we know, the states and territories have a range of different targets. Most of them are this morning saying they're not for changing. So where do you go to next?
Well, those targets are really unrealistic, and we've heard some of the state premiers now walk away from them saying they're only aspirational, they're not their specific policies. But the implications of those targets are quite profound. On the cost side, we've seen today being reported that for Queensland and Victoria alone, it will require an additional $41 billion worth of investment to meet those state-based targets. Where's that money coming from? Where are those wind turbines going to be placed?
Where's that figure coming from? Excuse the interruption.
The Department of Environment has looked at the situation in those states, taking into account what would be put in place for renewable energy to meet the 23.5% federal renewable energy target, and then looking at the difference after that to meet the state-based targets.
It's a good thing, though, the approach to renewable energy. Australia was a signatory to the Paris Climate Agreement, which we know in the last couple of days will take place. Why shouldn't there be this push to wind power, solar power and the rest?
Well, there are 2 points there in your question. The first is we're absolutely committed to reducing emissions, and we took to Paris very strong targets, 26 to 28% on 2005 levels by 2030. That was the second highest in the G20. And we are committed to renewable energy. We have a legislated target of 23.5%.
Up until 2020, what happens after that?
Well, actually, it goes out to 2030 at that particular number that you reach to 2020. So renewable energy will still be invested in going forward.
But only at 23.5%. Why not increase that over the following
Because this
decade?
goes to the heart of what we've just seen in recent days, is that when you have more intermittent power, particularly wind and solar, so when the wind's not blowing, the sun's not shining, power's not being generated, it does raise questions for the stability of the system. Now, that one could be more reliance on interconnectors, and when the interconnectors go down, there's a higher chance, according to AEMO, of a regional-wide blackout. And secondly, you don't produce the frequency of the power at a consistent 50 hertz, which you do get with hydro, you do get with coal, you do get with gas. So there's some of the practical issues that we as ministers have to look at to make sure that we have the right systems in place.
Let's move now to our top story, the closure after 91 years of Ford making cars in Australia. We have had 3 years' notice of this, but that doesn't lessen the blow for the 600 workers losing their jobs today. We can talk about retraining and assistant programs, but a lot of those people, as you and I know, will struggle to find extra work. What help is available for them?
Well, this is a sad day. I drive a Ford Territory myself and, been a proud owner of Australian-made cars for some time. What we have to do is support those workers as much as we can. I know that the Industry Minister, Greg Hunt, is doing that. But we also have to look for new opportunities to create jobs in Australia, bearing in mind we did create more than 200,000 jobs over the last 12 months, and we have seen unemployment go down. That's cold comfort to those 600 workers, as you say, at Ford. But the free trade agreements that we are building, the focus on innovation, the focus on looking for new industries where Australia has a competitive edge. When we look at affordability of energy and electricity, that is critical to attracting investment. They're all the relevant questions that we as a government are focused on.
Just to another issue, that unedifying row between the Attorney-General George Brandis and Justin Gleeson, the Solicitor-General, is getting worse. Fairfax this morning reporting that George Brandis rejected his own Solicitor-General's advice on the same-sex marriage plebiscite. And not just that, sought advice from the Howard Government Solicitor-General. This won't end well for one of these men. Which one should go?
Well, that's not for me to talk about the Solicitor-General. That's a matter for the Attorney-General, other than for me to say the Attorney-General is doing a fantastic job. He's not resigning, despite the Labor Party's calls to even up the score after Sam Dastyari's resignation. This is just a political ploy from the Labor Party to push and push and push this. George Brandis has given his version of events. He hasn't misled Parliament, and he's doing a terrific job.
Josh Frydenberg, we wish you well with the meeting today. Thanks very much for joining us this morning.
Nice to be with you, Michael.